Hosting our first lecture related to Sikkim since the library opened in 2003, and we hope that it's been a long time coming, but we hope it's the first of many. We're especially pleased that the speaker to represent this first is Kalsang Dorje Butiala, who's a scholar in many aspects of Sikkimese history, literature, language. In fact, when we were organizing this talk, he sent a lengthy list of possible topics, and we were all sitting there. You know, one was on literature, one was on colonialism, and we said, "Oh, this is a good one. This is a good one." But it was really hard to choose. But we went with we felt that the talk on Sikkimese language and literary reform really resonated with the work that we're doing here at Tears Foundation in Tibetan areas, supporting Tibetan medium education, Tibetan language publications. And it's also a topic we're exploring in our lecture series, Minority Languages in a Global Society, the last event of which is in 2 weeks. So just to give you a little background, Genla completed his postgraduate education in Buddhist studies, history, and law at the University of Delhi and the University of Lucknow in India, and his monastic education in his home state of Sikkim. He has conducted research on Sikkimese culture, religion, literature, and history. And his research interests include Sikkimese language and literature, colonialism and anti-colonialism in Sikkimese history, and indigenous environmentalism in the Himalayas. He is currently teaching at the University of Alabama. So, welcome, Genla.
Thank you, Christine, and also thank you, Pamela. I've never actually thought that I would be talking in New York, since the place is the world is a very funny place. Sometimes I think like that. So somehow it happened that I was down there in South in Alabama, and through somehow we met, and that way I was known to Hatsi. Yep, so that's how I came here, and thank you so much for Trace Foundation and Hatsi, especially Hatsi Library, and also to Pamela and Christine. Yeah, so today yeah, I'm just having a topic out there. I hope everybody's just going through it. And I'm here to just give you not a really deep research or something like that, but maybe some sort of an overview. And I just don't want to take much time. I just want to give it as a story, just tell a story. And yes, after that we can have a question and answer if you have any questions. So as for now, I'm just don't want to hold up time, and I just prepared a little bit of overview. So I'm going to read it out. Okay. So thank you. Yeah. So as for Sikkimese tradition, to everybody, Kusuzambo. And yeah. Yeah, so today I'm here to discuss the topic of Sikkimese language, and particularly its development in the fields of education and literary arts in Sikkim, or known as Denjung. Sikkim became part of the state of India in 1975. Sikkimese language, or Denjung Ke, or known as Hokke, as we call it in Sikkim, is a bit neglected. It's a neglected topic of study in the academic community. So there was a manual of Denjung Ke –
19th, 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 19
a Darjeeling missionary and a master's thesis in linguistics written in the early 2000s about Sikkimese grammar. Other than that, there are no studies of the social, historical, or political process through which written Sikkimese has been formed as a distinctive language. So instead, if studies do mention Sikkimese, it is to be called debauched form of Tibetan language, as has been argued by scholars of other Tibetan dialects, such as Amdo-ke. Such an etiquette is dangerous since it devalues distinctive and diverse form of oral and at times literary expression within the broader Tibetan culture whole in favor of an image of an hegemonic form of Tibetan, which was never really present. So today I will explore with you the distinct tradition of Sikkimese literary expression from the past through the present, and delve into how the process of modernity and post-modernity have influenced the development of modern Sikkimese language. So, through the efforts of a number of reformers and writers, traditional approaches to the teachings of Sikkimese language have become fused into the modern Indian secular education system. So while Sikkimese is now taught from class 1 to 12 and also at the university level, there are still a number of challenges present in Sikkimese society that pose questions about how Sikkimese will survive as a language in the 21st century. Yes, to begin with it, I'll just give you a brief introduction of Sikkim. So I hope everybody knows about Sikkim. I think we do have audience, I think, can relate to that map, so I don't think I should spend much time. Anyway, for those too new in this geography, Sikkim is now part of northeast state of Indian Union. However, in 1975, it was a Persian Buddhist kingdom that was formerly, submerged with India. And prior to that, it was a Buddhist kingdom, which was that was formally founded in 1642. The traditional histories of Sikkim begin with the enthronement of the first Namgyal dynasty Dharma kings, known as the Chogyals, by the Tibetan visionary saint Lhotsen Namkha Jigme. Lhotsen Namkha Jigme from 1597 to 1654. The events that set in motion in the incorporation of Sikkim into India can be traced to the 19th century, when Sikkim became a complex relationship with the British East India Company, later known as the British Raj, and eventually became a formal protectorate of British Empire. So in 1947, upon Indian independence, this protectorate status was transferred to the independent state of India. In 1975, under the order of Indira Gandhi, then the Prime Minister of India, Sikkim was officially incorporated into the Indian Union, which led to the conversion of monarchical institutions into bureaucracy of modern secular India. So the state of Sikkim borders with the countries of Nepal in the west and country of Bhutan in the east, and China to the north. Previously it was Tibet, and West Bengal to the south. So its current population is 540,493 people, and a number of different ethnic groups live there. Nepalis are a majority, but the earliest settlers were known as the Lepchas. So according to oral history, in the 13th century, a group of Tibetans moved to Sikkim. It's said as according to different sources. And this group became known as the Lopus, or known as the present Bhutias, or the Lopus, literally translation can mean as the Southerners. So they make up around 14% of the population and speak a dialect related to Tibetan known as Sikkimese or Loki, or the southern language, or Denjungke, known as the Denjungke means the language of the Valley of Rice, De and Jong, and share a common classical written language and script with Tibetan. So after the annexation of Sikkim, they and their language became known as Bhutia. According to the state census of 2005 and 2006, 32,593 Sikkimese out of a total of 49,837 can speak Sikkimese. The current status of this language as a minority language within the tiny state of India provides us with another perspective of how a little known dialect of Tibetan has adapted to the experience of modern nation state where its people are minority and no longer have their own nation. However, unlike Tibetan dialects used in People's Republic of China today, Sikkimese has not seen an opportunity, seen an outpouring of interest or literary production. So in fact, even much of Sikkim's historical library has been destroyed through centuries of war with Nepal and Bhutan, and also occupation by British and civil wars in 1970s. So there is a general paucity of modern forms of literature. So this raises for the interesting question about the influence of statehood on language and relationship between signifiers of ethnic and community identity, language and colonial modernity. So Lopos or Sikkimese traditionally trace their ancestors or ancestry back to Tibet. There are a number of narratives that discuss the journey of early Lopos from Tibet to Sikkim. Significantly, however, there are oral accounts. There are no written records available from the 17th century period. Even after the beginning of the Namgyal dynasty and the formal recognition of Sikkim as a state by the 5th Dalai Lama's Gaden Podrong's government in 1642, we do not find the development of an indigenous Sikkimese language literary tradition. Instead, the written correspondence covering political and religious relevance was in classical Tibetan. More localized Sikkimese narratives were transferred through an oral tradition. So there are a few examples of Tibetan classical literature from Sikkim. One exception to this is the collected work of the third incarnation of Lhachen Chimpu, known as the Lhachen Tulku Jigme Pao. Jigme Pao was born in Tibet in 1682, but after being recognized at a young age, spent many years in Sikkim. Perhaps one of the most interesting aspect of his life was his assumption of regentship on behalf of the king of Sikkim following the death of the third Chogyal, that's the Chogyal Chadam Namgyal in 1750. The crown prince was said he was only 8 at the time of his father's death. So Chadam Namgyal did not trust the factionalized court around him, and on his deathbed requested Jigme Pao to act as his regent. So Jigme Pao did so and remained in power until the year 1721, when the fourth king of Sikkim, Gyurme Namgyal, assumed the throne. So this is the only example that we have of a Tibetan Tulku acting as a region in Tibetan history, where the Tulku did not grab for power and is therefore facilitating the case studies. So this story and more are documented in Jigme Pao's collected works. Though it is referred to as Sungbum, the real genre of this work is problematic to define. So in places, it is more of an autobiography. Elsewhere, it records as sadhanas and lists of teachers and students. So the intriguing aspect of this text is that although Jigme Pao was Tibetan, entire sections include Sikkimese terms and grammar. Therefore, Jigme Pao's collected works represent the most widely known and perhaps the earliest example of a piece of Sikkimese literature. So that is Tulku Jigme Pao's previous, known as Yellow Hapchen Chipu, and Jigme Pao was the third incarnation. And so far, I couldn't get an exact photo of him because the camera just broke down. Otherwise, we don't find many interesting pictures of Jigme Pao. The only reference is that I was lucky enough to find a text that I was searching for and was able to find it in the University of Chicago. That there is a very interesting sketch. If you have gone through, you can check it out in the Sungbum. It's a really interesting sketch of Jigme Pao, the third incarnation of Hapchen Chipu. So apart from this text, there are a few examples of Sikkimese literature until the 1970s. The writing until the 19th century is all in Tibetan. After 1880s, when secular education became more common in Sikkim through the process of colonial modernity, due to the presence of British political officers, people who were not monastics but were educated tended to write in English. So even the famous 1908 text on the history of Sikkim, known as the Denjong Gyalap, or known as the Royal Annals of Sikkim, that was written by the king, or the ninth king of Sikkim, known as Thutuk Namgyal, and his wife Gyalmo Eshi Dolmo, was in Tibetan, though some terms were in Sikkimese. So after 1947, Sikkim became a protectorate of India, despite the departure of British colonial authorities. English dominated as the language of official discourse and literature. So Nepali was also very common due to the growing demographic of Nepali people in Sikkim. So during the 1950s, the newly independent India attempted to make society more inclusive and acknowledged the diversity of cultures. Diversity of cultures and languages in its borders and movement. So this meant in many places, including the northeast part of India, education departments focused particularly on ensuring that local languages be incorporated into the curriculum of the state schools. So Sikkim, however, continued to focus largely on English as a dominant language for schooling. So due to the king's argument that English would allow Sikkimese to communicate with the outside world more effectively, and also Tibetan. So in 1975, after the Sino-Indian War, in order to consolidate India's borders, the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi ordered the formal incorporation of Sikkim into India. So while the king lost his monarchical right to rule, with the democratic secular government of India, Sikkim did retain several privileges. So one of these was a clause that was included in the Constitution of India, which guaranteed Sikkimese people the right to retain their cultural heritage. So some of my own research has examined some of the difficulties of putting this legislation into practice, but the incorporation of Sikkimese language and the development of its literary form is one definitely a beneficial aspect of this legislation. So in 1977, a person very known as Modernity, a school teacher of Sikkimese language, who had risen to the rank of inspectors of schools, released the first ever book on Sikkimese literature. He developed a spelling system of Sikkimese language, which retained the use of Tibetan Uchen script, but modified the grammatical particles to resemble spoken Sikkimese. So his efforts also saw the implementation of consistent Sikkimese curriculum for class 1 to till 8. So in 1987, Sikkimese was introduced in government schools from class 9 through class 12. So more standardized textbooks were developed, and the impetus grew to the extent that by 2000 there was enough interest present in Sikkimese language to be made an official BA subject in Sikkimese universities. So these efforts have only been possible due to the series of reformers and writers in Sikkim who worked through their own efforts to develop Sikkimese in its written form. So the first one is Modernity. We can term him as the father of modern literary Sikkimese. Modernity, who received also a Padma Shri award from Government of India for his substantial effort in Sikkimese language. Modernity was born in 1943 and graduated from the famous missionary school, St. Joseph's College in Darjeeling. He received a Bachelor's of Education degree in mid-1960s from the Bhubaneswar College of Education, which is in the state of Orissa. So he became a school teacher in Sikkim initially before being sent to teach Sikkimese at the Indian Army's or Indian Army Officers School, and then rejoining the public service, where he has played a number of roles in education department, the Sikkim police, and the ecclesiastical department. So his effort in language reform have not only been in Sikkimese, he has also been lauded for efforts to standardize and promulgate literature in Limbu as well. So, well, Northern Ching, to begin, he began with often he worked alone to design a new Sikkimese primers and textbooks. He later began a series of collaborations with other scholars. The most recent and exciting output from such a collaboration is his Bhutia English Dictionary, which he wrote with Pema Rinjing Dr. Tarpa in 2001. So next we look at is the only figure who problematizes Northern Ching's role as the father of modern Sikkimese is Pema Rinjing Dr. Tarpa, whose prolific output of works related to the development of Sikkim is unrivaled, and he means he could easily also be called the father of Sikkimese. His work includes multiple grammar books, dictionaries, college texts, and poems. Pema Rinjing was born in West Sikkim in 1946, and he became a language teacher in 1966 before eventually rising to become a crucial part of the education department in Sikkim, where he served as a deputy director for language and later as joint director for education. So Pema Rinjing became famous after a series of public disputes in which he defended the simplified spelling and reformed grammar of modern Sikkimese to detractors through pointing out the importance of usefulness of for a language. He argued that classical Tibetan spelling led to confusion for young people, and therefore he has created easier spelling forms for many Sikkimese words. He continues to be very active for his retirement and takes part in editing magazines and textbooks. So the diversity of Pema Rinjing's output is extraordinary, as well as writing poems and life stories of religious figures. He has also translated a number of works on Western science into Sikkimese language. So one of Pema Rinjing's relatives, Tashipalki Pempu, is slightly younger than these two. He's the current joint director of language in Sikkim, and so he has therefore resumed their official post. So he continues many of their initiatives, including printing magazines and books, and is also himself a poet. Next we have another figure who retains active in government service in Sikkim while maintaining a prolific output that includes short stories, poems, textbooks, almanac, songs, and even novels, is Baichung Chichutakpa. Baichung and Pema Rinjing both represent the most eclectic of Sikkimese writers. They both have an intense engagement in modernity and willingness to embrace technologies. So Baichung and his wife, for example, write and record songs and music videos in Sikkimese that are distributed throughout the state. So these songs are often about religion and Sikkimese customs, but are very popular, especially among older people. So Baichung is also sought after for his traditional knowledge and composes the state almanac. So he's also the author of a number of plays. The first ever official novel in Sikkimese can see it on the PowerPoint, known as the Rechi, or known as the Hope. And his most famous play is known as the Namtok, which could be translated as maybe a superstition, or a blind belief, or a blind faith, and a moralistic drama that warns people not to believe in superstition, as represented by a bongting, or a shaman, against progress, which is represented by a doctor. So while simplistic, such themes are popular in modern Sikkimese literature, along with examination of religion and construction of traditional culture. So another example of these tendencies and the creation of useful traditional culture as opposed to superstition and backwards. So you have another tradition is the writer Sunam Gyatso. Sunam Gyatso's popular book on marriage rituals, published in 2001, which outlines marriage rites and traditions in great detail. So that book is so sought after. It's testament to the popularity of this topic, even in modern India. So Indian cultural sensibilities can be found in modern Sikkimese literature, however. Baichung Chitra's novel Richi, as I've said, or known as Hope, was published originally in 1996 and again in 2003. So the narrative outlines a love story between a village teacher and her student's older brother. The novel plots their meeting and mutual fascination before they are separated when the boy goes to study medicine. So in true Indian Bollywood style, the girl is married off to a man of her parents' choice. So fate cruelly brings the lovers together once again, though when she becomes seriously ill and finds the man as a doctor. So the novel ends. Yeah. Yeah, so the novel ends with the hope that she can be his again in a future lifetime. So that is maybe known as the Rechi, the hope. And there's also an interesting quote from the page, which I would like to read it out, but if you are interested. So, for the Tibetan part, you can listen and just try to find out if you can actually find some similarities. So this is, they say, Lang Khor Nang Ni Chaki Karme Tengo Mik Chechi Chukti Tashin Mai Mikna Tarung Rechi Manjobar Depo Epo Dao Mai Semna Agyat Karma Membo Mai Semna Agyat Karma Tha Membo Tensartu. So this is like how she expresses, especially the word like she says like Tarung Richi Manjobar De Epo Dao. So this is what the karma, the doctor who was examining her, actually she was not expressing, but he thought like maybe she was imagining about her lover, despite they could meet each other, but they just met in the hospital. Yeah, so yeah, we can have some kind of comparison later after the talk. Yeah, so so along with this melodramatic romantic style, Hope is also interesting due to its conservative social message that prescribes following the will of one's family as opposed to one's wishes. So this conservatism is probably created to the intended audience of the novel, high school and university students. So much of the writing of this author is pedagogical as opposed to artistic in purpose, and the message conveyed in the narratives reflect these concerns. All right, so so you may have noticed several conspicuous gaps in my outline of prominent Sikkimese writers ever. Firstly, there are no women mentioned whatsoever. So this is because there are currently no major works or textbooks written by women in Sikkim. However, women are involved in Sikkimese literary production. Several have written poetry for Sikkimese language magazines. The age group of these writers all place them above 50 years of age. The reasons for this are complex and linked to a number of challenges that Sikkimese language reform has faced and continues to negotiate. So the largest and the most basic challenge Sikkimese faces as a language today is its continued relevance as a local language in a globalized world. It is very difficult to even gain an accurate picture of how many people actually use Sikkimese in written as well as spoken forms. While census and linguistic surveys are underway to establish this information, the problem is in the past has been that these surveys cannot capture fluency level, multilingualism, or the amount of time spent code switching. Sikkim has a literary rate of over 80%, considering only 40% of the populations are local. This statistic represents other languages. So I would argue, based on the amount of education available in Sikkim and the information presented here tonight, that will under 5% of Sikkim, or 5% of Sikkim's populations are fluent in Sikkimese, and that therefore under 5% could compose Sikkimese literature. So the state census of 2005 and 2006 that I quoted earlier mentions that approximately 32,000 Sikkimese out of a total of 49,000 can actually speak Hokkien. But the problem with these statistics is that it does not define what counts as fluency. So many Sikkimese speakers tend to code switch through multiple languages, including Sikkimese, Nepali, English, and sometimes Hindi or Lepcha. So in the course of one sentence, and many Sikkimese in the urbanized east and south of Sikkim, particularly around Gangtok, do not speak Sikkimese fluently in a traditional sense. Instead, mostly switching between languages. So this makes it very difficult to verify people's fluency and the demographics of Sikkimese. So another major issue in Sikkimese language is its status as diglossic language. So diglossia is a linguistic term and refers to a situation where a language community uses two languages or dialects of language. The first is the present-day vernacular, and the second, the ancestral version of the vernacular, or another distinct language. So this is the case in Sikkim, where people may use Sikkimese in a domestic setting, but will use English as well as Nepali in public settings. The reason why this situation is distinct is because diglossia refers to the idea that two languages or dialects used within a language community will each have certain spheres of social interactions assigned to them. And within the assigned spheres of our situations, that language will be the only socially accepted language. So in linguistic theory, the dialect, that is the mother tongue, is held in low esteem. It may be used at home or among friends, but not in situations dealing with people who have high prestige levels. The other dialect or language, in the case of Sikkim, English or Nepali, is always held in high esteem and is used for official written and formal spoken communications. So this dialect requires formal education, which means that societies that have a diglossic setup also have a social inequality. Social inequality and knowledge of language will be linked to class and social status, and therefore power. So Lara McConey has argued that modern Tibet also has a diglossic situation. The problem with the diglossic situation is that continuing to learn a local language that is not privileged does not have as many incentives. So one cannot get a government job with Sikkimese alone. One must also know English, Nepali, and maybe Hindi. And if one knows these languages, they have also access to a wide variety of other jobs. So education institutions also perpetuate the image of Sikkimese as a less relevant language. So only government schools in Sikkim are obliged to offer a Sikkimese language curriculum. However, Sikkim has a number of private schools within it or nearby on the border in West Bengal. These schools were mostly funded by missionaries and are renowned for their thorough grounding in English language. So English language in modern Sikkim is the language of the middle and the upper classes. It is thus a language of status associated with political and economic power. There is great incentive to study English thoroughly, which leads many parents and guardians to seek out the best English language programs available for their children from a young age to give them a chance to compete in a country of hundreds of millions. So locals in Sikkim are known as hardworking. Even if they are not wealthy, they will often go to great length to ensure the children are educated in the schools as a matter of social standing. However, in these missionary schools, local language is often not taught, except maybe one of the school in Kalimpong, maybe St. Joseph, I think the Tibetan is introduced. But other than that, since most of the children are board in the schools and only return home 3 or sometimes per year, they don't get much, longer holidays. So they are rarely exposed to their mother tongue, which means English in many ways replaces that earlier mother tongue. So while also rendering the children tragically unable to converse in their own language, or even if they can converse, they are illiterate. since writing in Tibetan script is also not taught. So this means that it is becoming more and more unlikely that young Sikkimese will want or need to become highly fluent in reading, writing, and speaking Sikkimese. And that due to this future of Sikkimese, it is significantly threatened. Yep, so I don't have much of PowerPoint there. So in order to counteract some of these problems and make young people more involved and interested in Sikkimese language, some older Hopos have attempted a number of initiatives. So many of these Hopos, as well as lectures who have fluency in Sikkimese from close living proximity with Hopos, are older men who were educated within the Sikkimese monastic establishment, who may have, before 1975, worked in Sikkim government. So in order to earn an income within modern India, they became high school teachers in the government schools. So before going on to rise to administrative positions within the Sikkim state government, that's after before 1975 and after 1975, means before the merger and after the merger. So some of the most influential of these people include personalities like Pema Rinzin Takshin Tarpa, Tashi Palki Perko, and Baichung Chichatarpa. So these three have all been active in writing new Sikkimese language textbooks, as well as in the 1980s and 1990s, attempting to start small Sikkimese literary magazines. So these magazines have never taken off in popularity as Tibetan literary ventures did in the 1980s, People's Republic of China. So despite the editor's effort to engage educated lamas, temples, religious figures, and teachers to write, and to get their students to write, writing in Sikkim or Sikkimese is not a popular pastime. So while some older Sikkimese may compose poetry and stories for their own enjoyment, they do not publish this. So this is largely due to devaluation of Sikkimese language. Young people particularly are far more interested in watching TV or MTV or B channel or something like that, rather than reading, and in shopping than studying traditional language when they come home from school. So this has not stopped these writers from trying to engage people in new literary ventures, though. So based on these figures, there are a few characteristics of modern Sikkimese literature. Firstly, its writers tend to be involved heavily in the education role. Secondly, they explicitly connect language with other cultural activities. Other cultural activities such as astrology and music. An example of this is that these three men are all involved in an organization called Kerap Yarge Chokpo, known as the Association for the Promotion of Language and Knowledge, that is aimed at promoting Sikkimese culture and language. The organization is focused on young people and provides financing to young people intending to publish music or write. So most of the projects carried out by the group thus far are related to music. So thirdly, they are all from the older generation. Most young people who become involved in these initiatives are interested in music rather than writing. So these characteristics also point to multiple problematic points. The largest one is the link between Sikkimese literary initiatives and official state educational initiatives. Today, Sikkimese literary production tends to stem from pedagogical environments and motivations rather than artistic ones. So this means that Sikkimese literature focuses on constructed notions of traditionalism rather than modern relevant themes, and also that it tends to be moralistic and even preachy, as opposed to conveying ideas about life and art. So these are problems because they limit the audience for Sikkimese language works and also make them less relevant to our contemporary young people who really need to take up these initiatives for Sikkimese to survive and thrive. So Longden Bhutia, a scholar associated with the new private group Sikkim Academy, which focuses on educational initiatives, has identified a number of areas of improvement for Sikkimese that could address some of these problems. So he critiques the National Books Trust of India for withdrawing funding for translation of old literary classics into Sikkimese. If this project was undertaken, it would make a broader range of themes and genres available to Sikkimese young people. So he also argues the state media to incorporate Sikkimese more prominently in its publications and media, which again would make it more obviously relevant. So, so with these initiatives really drawn in the youth of today, the absence of young people from the modern Sikkimese literary scenes, if we can call it, demonstrates an important difference with modern Tibetan literature. But it also very troubling. So this difference has a number of causes. Firstly, Tibetans have an impetus to retain their language. All other signifiers of Tibetan identity has been threatened or changed beyond recognition. Language, unlike buildings, statues, books and clothes, cannot be destroyed if people continue to speak it and write in it. Secondly, in Sikkim, people have the choice between languages and cultures. They retain all outer signifiers of Sikkimese identity, including dress and religious practice. But they do not feel the pain of deprivation and loss that reinforces the preciousness of their language. Additionally, as the People's Republic of China is a diglossic society, in that minority languages are seen as socio-politically disempowered in comparison to Chinese. Modern Sikkim is also a diglossic society, or perhaps a multi-glossic society, as a number of languages are used for official discourse, but the mother tongue, here Sikkimese, is devalued economically and politically as so-called useful language in modern society. So knowledge of English, Nepali or Hindi is essential for survival in everyday life in Sikkim. So in the space of multiple languages, code switching has become so chronic that fluency in any one of these languages at times seems impossible, since to make sense, Nepali and English are needed. So therefore, even if an individual can speak Sikkimese, she will often mix languages in order to be understood by others. So in some of the larger urban areas, such as places like Gangtok, fluency in Sikkimese is increasingly rare. Many locals have restricted knowledge of the language to a particular social situation, and the rest of the time code switch to make themselves understood. A strange kind of outcome of this situation has developed due to the fact that in certain situations knowledge of Sikkimese is seen as an asset. It is the way in which a person's culture and commitment to Sikkimese Delpa, our tradition, is measured. So this is often in traditional situations, such as in community settings of a monastery or with more senior locals. So in other ways, the language is not seen as practical, nor is it always associated with culture. So due to the stigma associated with government schooling and the preference of English schooling, which I've just mentioned above, younger people who only have a fluency in Sikkimese and no other language are seen as uneducated or uncultured, and presumably have come from rural areas. So this can bring them very real economic detriment in certain social settings, as they may not be able to go work in their locality, but since they do not know any other language, they cannot work in an urban setting with more job opportunities either. So there is thus a contradiction in how Sikkimese language is viewed within modern Sikkim. On the other hand, it is seen as a marker of sophistication and tradition. On the other, the throwback of primitiveness. So this contradiction has developed out of initially British imperialism in Sikkim, and now has been reinforced by the hegemony of the Western capitalist media and missionary school. So as in the case of Tibetan language, the loss of Sikkimese language has occurred through social historical processes that are linked immediately to the rise of nation state, colonial modernity and capitalism. So however, unlike in the case of Tibetan, Sikkimese language has never been directly targeted by imperial powers. Instead, it has suffered from gradually become irrelevant and economically disempowered in a modern secular environment. So the gradual nature of this change has meant that many have not even been aware of it. It seems that in present time, the only way people will actually realize the loss of Sikkimese language when other parts of local culture start to be affected by it. So this is inevitable due to the intimate links between culture and language. When outer signifiers of the local identity, such as dress or religion, are implicated or damaged by the loss of language, maybe then will hopefully begin to react to the very real possibilities of the disappearance of Sikkimese language. So with that, I just try to conclude it, and those are some of my assumptions and findings. So thank you very much, and I would like to just conclude it. Thank you.
Any questions? I'm going to ask you to if you speak loud.
Well, I'll speak loud. So, what are the kids doing? How do they communicate with the grandpas and the grandmas, or the lamas?
Not the lamas. You mean like the kids when they go to a boarding school?
Go to boarding school,
That's a major problem, which I think Sikkimese parents does not put much of importance in that. That is a major problem because they mostly get little time during their upbringing, and often after 3 to 4 years they are sent off to boarding school. Means the language is actually being shut down. And the main problem is after they come home they don't have enough time, and the conversation that usually does not take place. So that's a major problem we want. Yeah. So it is very difficult conversation. So in some cases, maybe in some families in Western Sikkim, their kids when they are quite minor, that means when they don't send them to boarding school, means they're getting much more time with their parents and learning to converse. So that way they get much time to pick up their language. Otherwise, I think, I don't know whether you will have gone to that situation or have seen the situation or not, but it is really problematic. It is a major problem. So maybe Sikkimese parents, it's high time that they should think about it very seriously, and the importance of the learning of language in the beginning, in the initial time. I think if they have to, cover up, then maybe it's time now that they should rethink and develop certain programs. Other than that, it is really problematic.
Do you think the Sahitya Academy can help in some way?
The Sahitya Academy, it is quite interesting because somewhere it's mentioned that they always, go for certain kind of program, which is quite good, like which they.
So why don't you make it compulsory to learn Sikkimese in school, like say from class 8 to 12 or class 9 to 12?
Yeah, in the government schools, there are programs, and I think most of the Bhutia kids take up that program. But the major problem here is that the middle class, they cannot afford to go to this higher, the private schools.
They can.
Yeah. So the low-income group, since they can't send the kids to boarding schools in Darjeeling or Kalimpong or so-called schools, it is not possible for them to get this education. Otherwise, students who are going to government schools, they have the facilities. But then you find in the statistics that those students who are actually doing the programs in government schools are very less in number. So that's kind of, when you gather some kind of data, you can find that differentiation. Because mostly all the students are in private or English medium schools.
Some more questions. I hope I'm not bothering you too much. Well, first of all, I think the Bhutias are missing a point here, because political power has also gone to the Nepalese, and that's the truth. There's only one minister who's of Bhutia ancestry, and forget the lectures. I'm not even going to go there because they probably already lost the language, other than very poor people talking. But I won't ask any more questions. But what do you think of Chamling's poetry?
his poetry. But I
He claims to be a poet.
I haven't like personally gone through his poetry.
I had the unfortunate.
but people talk about it that he's quite of a writer, and his poetry carries that kind of message.
So he does understand the value of language.
Yeah.
So he can do something for Bhutia language also.
No, I think as from the department and government of Sikkim is concerned about the Bhutia language, and the government schools are concerned, I think they are
Doing what they can.
Yeah, what they can. The only problem is with the private schools, because everybody wants to like send their kids to a private school, and at the same time they later think like, oh, our children, our kids cannot talk in their own language,
Yeah.
So they're missing that gap, and they question themselves, thinking, oh, where have I gone wrong? They're not thinking because they are in continuous process of doing the same thing again and again, and nobody's actually paying attention about how to fill up that gap. So in that process, I think it's high time. I don't know if they have to improve in that way. Maybe they have to. All the guardians have to get together and should request the private schools to incorporate Bhutia, language, so that way the children can go and learn the language, so that they don't get missed out. But so far it's not seen anywhere. In all the missionary schools, for example, one school has come up in Gazing, known as St. Mary's, and there's no way that Sikkimese language is picked up. So most of all the Western Sikkimese children, they go to St. Mary's rather than opting for going to government schools, where there's English language, they say it's weak. So they go for a better English medium, and then they miss out, and then when they are grown up, like when they reach around class 11, 12, and the kids are really interested to know about the language, and they ask questions, and they question their parents, and the parents doesn't have an answer, because they are, after the Western education, and then the children missed out such a big thing. So that's become a major.
And it's the same thing in every state. I'm from West Bengal. I'm from Calcutta. In the school that I went to, we were punished if we spoke in Bengali.
Yeah, that's also another.
So
they say local dialogue, isn't it? If you speak local dialect, then you'll find for like some they get fined like rupees 10 or 5.
Oh my God.
So such kind of things goes on. So the children, they get it in first instance, they are not learning, and in the second, even if they are interested about conversing with their own friends, they get fined. So like they get really.
It's almost like swearing.
Yeah. So that's a big problem. So I don't know. It's upon the modern Sikkimese parents to come up with some kind of maybe a program, or maybe a parents meeting, and
Maybe some good music will help.
Yeah.
We have a question here.
Yes.
Hi, thank you so much. Hi. So my question is, you talk much about the education system and sort of popular uses of vernacular uses of language, and I'm wondering one thing that you didn't really touch upon that I'm curious about is within the monasteries, in particular the sort of isolated monastic communities, to what extent have they become sort of hotspots, if you will, for the conservation of local dialects? Not the written, although I'd love to hear you talk about that, but in particular the local vernaculars.
You mean in the monastic?
In the monasteries themselves, amongst the monks, amongst the ordained communities.
In the Sikkim, one thing is it's a Nyingma area, and if you look at from a Sikkimese monastic community from Sikkimese perspective, you don't find many ordained or galons, mostly in monasteries. Yeah. But they do have, Sikkimese. They don't have a strong Sikkimese, dialogue there, but mostly the language which they talk will be in Sikkimese, but there's no much of strong dialogue there.
So Loket is not being maintained or sustained, conserved within sort of religious communities?
So it depends on which monastery it is. For example, in Sikkimese monasteries, most of the monks, they do have a conversation in Sikkimese, but when they read out, then the texts are in Tibetan. But the communication is happening in Bhutia.
It is,
Yeah,
right?
it is happening.
Yeah, I mean, my observations are, at least on the plateau, and particularly in the eastern Tibet, the local dialects are very much being sustained within religious communities that happen to be monastic, but regardless, as centers of institutions of education, but also as isolated areas of the local dialect that aren't forced to speak Chinese or English or whatever the sort of standard.
So in Sikkim, as far as dialogue is concerned, it is there. It's happening every time. There's no sense of being left out there in the monastic communities. Dialogue is pretty much it's the same Sikkimese Loke dialogue. It's there.
So they would speak both.
Yeah, they speak Loke. Yeah, they speak Loke, and at times. Depends on the situation. If they have to speak Tibetan, they can speak Tibetan, and also sometimes they speak, depends on the younger generation. They code switch in Nepali or Hindi or something like that. You can always find that, even in the monastic community. Whereas if you look at the older generation, then they maintain, the pure Loke dialogue. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Kalzang, Kuzawa. Thank you for this great. Thank you for this great this lecture of yours. Till about an hour back, I was discouraged. Now I've always been discouraged about this whole Sikkimese thing and people not understanding, not being able to speak it. But I feel a little encouraged now. I'm like, okay, there are people, like-minded people, who are interested in trying to make this a revival, or even not even a revival, just taking pride in this, being able to do something about it. I'm a good example of a person who doesn't speak Sikkimese, but I am Sikkimese. I'm 100% Sikkimese. I don't understand why I didn't speak Sikkimese. I've tried all my life, I've made so many efforts. I can take you for a beer, and I can go on for days and days about what I've tried and how I've tried to go about this, with not much results. But to my own credit, I have tried, and I know that it is possible to speak Sikkimese, because today I speak some form of broken Sikkimese, and all through my own efforts without any help. There's no books, there's no literature, there's nothing. But there is an effort you can have, because to me, language is unifying. It's pride. You can have pride in that. And once you have pride in it, it brings along lots of things. It's very interesting. And today what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Economics, yes. If it doesn't have an economic incentive, why not? You don't want to learn the language. But at the same time, it's your mother tongue. I don't see how people can't see that. There is economics. I see that. I understand that. I applaud that. Send your children to English schools. Teach them English. They should. But there's also the pride in having your mother tongue. Being able to speak that, being able to have something that says, hey, culturally, we're Sikkimese. Culturally, this can unify us. And I can give you lots of instances. I went to Sikkim last year, and I did meet a few of these people. Again, I was out in the cold, couldn't figure out how I was going to do this. So someone said, hey, why don't you meet Mr. Northern? So I went and met Mr. Northern, and he said, oh, why don't you go meet Mr. Baichung? So I said, oh, okay, I can go meet Mr. Baichung. So I went and met Mr. Baichung. I was like, okay, so who are you? He's like, I introduced myself. I said, I'm Wanchuk, I'm from Washington, D.C. And so he said he's got a newspaper. I said, oh, it's a newspaper. I said, what newspaper? He said, Sikkimese. I said, oh, a Sikkimese newspaper for who? Like, no one reads Sikkimese, no one understands Sikkimese, so why do you have a newspaper? So I said, but I said, it's a good start. I said, this is wonderful. I said, okay, this makes sense. So I went all around Gangtok to people saying, hey, maybe you can, subscribe to this newspaper. But everyone was like, no, we're not going to subscribe to a newspaper because, you pay for it. And I don't understand it, so why would I pay for it? So it made sense. Like, why would you? So I guess what I'm trying to get at is you have to be able to read it, be able to understand it, to be even able to say, a lot of the things you said today were very encouraging. Like you said, you know, there's an author, there's literacy, there's a CD, there's music, all of that. But if someone doesn't understand that, there's going to be no economic benefits for those people as well. So there has to be some kind of a movement which can allow these people to understand, read, be able to enjoy these benefits of having their own culture and language. So what I did was I got a database of people who might be interested to subscribe to the newspaper. And sadly, no one was interested. so what I did was, with my own money, because it was such a little amount of money, it was like $2, $3 for, you know, a year's subscription. So I subscribed for all my family, including a lot of people here. You know, like I just said, okay, get the newspaper, because if we can get the newspaper off the ground, there'll be some interest in this newspaper. You know.
Yeah.
And then I try to explain to them that, okay, when the time comes, I'm going to do this for you now, but when the time comes, a year from now, you have to resubscribe to it, because now you're going to pay for it, and when you pay for it, there'll be an incentive to try to see, hey, what am I paying for?
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time, there was a very interesting part in that newspaper where you could actually learn Sikkimese. There's one page, you might have seen it, there's one page in the back which teaches you Sikkimese, which, you know, there's certain languages, there's certain words, there's certain things that pertain to Sikkimese. So I said, you know, maybe this is a way we can go forward. So I'm not quite sure where this whole newspaper thing has gone, because I did try it, but that's an interesting, you know, that I applaud the fact that they have tried that. And another thing I wanted to bring to your point is the statistics you were giving.
Yeah.
There's 32,000 people out of the 48,900 people who speak Sikkimese. I love the fact that those are numbers, but I have a feeling that it's exaggerated and not true. I could probably say there's 5 people who speak Sikkimese. That's so sad. I mean, it's not true. I know there's not 5 people, but I know for a fact, like, everyone around me, not a single person speaks Sikkimese. Yeah. Not a single person, other than the older generation, you know, grandparents, people in the rural areas, other than, you know, everyone around me, not a single person speaks it. Yeah. I remember when I was in grade 8, everyone, you know, we had the whole Metallica, Guns N' Roses thing going on, and everyone was excited and doing this thing. I used to wear a Sikkimese dress, walking in Gangtok looking for a person to teach me Sikkimese. No one taught me. Yeah. But I forced people to teach me Sikkimese. I said, you know what, this is my language, I'm going to learn it. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is, you know, you got to make an initiative, yes. you got to have pride, but at the same time, you got to have resources, you got to have people who want to teach you, you got to have a class to go to, I got to have an online resource, I got to have someone like you, I got to have someone to say, hey, yeah, come to me, I'll teach you, you know, I'll teach you, pay me some money, I can pay you some money, but teach me. I don't have those resources. You know, so and this is another. So there's that whole. I mean, I've got lots of points. I can talk and talk and talk and talk forever. But again, like this is a great resource. This library. You see, you can come here, you can study, you can do all of these things. We don't have any of that. You know, we don't have any of these things to do. So I feel encouraged. You know, I feel good. You know, so I'm going to try to correspond with you and try to see if we can get something going on again.
Absolutely.
Why in Alabama?
I think we'll probably want to subscribe to the newspaper so you can add our name to this.
Yeah, I mean, thank you again for the great talk, and you know, I'm so glad about your work, and I didn't actually know about, you know, these other people doing the work. Wanchuk's my cousin, and he's been a lot more, he's put a lot more effort into learning Sikkimese than I myself have. I'm a product, again, of a missionary school that didn't even offer, you know, Sikkimese, and I guess the problem partly is because of the state exam that you have to do, the ICSE. Hindi is the encouraged language, so as a result I took Hindi as opposed to even Tibetan at that point. But I mean, I think as I grew older, then I realized the importance of learning the language, and sadly, my father wasn't one to really push it also, and my mother is English. So, but now I don't quite know what the solution is, like Wanchuk said, you know, it's also a lack of resources, or at least published resources, or, you know, people that really can tell you about these resources. But I don't know, maybe a small solution could be if the government could invest some time and money into maybe setting up, you know, a center that held Sikkimese classes on Saturdays or something, when school's not in session for, kids that go, say, to private schools, and, encourage that just kind of by word of mouth, and maybe, put it somehow in the requirements for government jobs, even that, a level of Sikkimese. I don't quite know what the solution is, but if I was in Sikkim at this point, I would definitely, have liked to have gone to like a Saturday school. I mean, now even in New York, there's options to learn Tibetan on Saturdays here at Lansing. Thank you so much to Pamela and Tenzing Lao. So, I've actually put my daughters in this class, and we're trying it that way. But I know with Sikkimese, there's definitely a lack of resources, and I'm glad you're doing the work you are, and hopefully there's some other people in Sikkim trying to preserve the language and having these resources to kind of.
How about
say a
Rachna
Saturday
books?
school or
Sorry
something?
to interrupt you. Rachna, are they doing something about Sikkimese? Rachna books, a new store that has opened up in
I don't
development
have
area.
much information about it at
Okay.
present. Maybe they must be organizing some small events. I have no much information.
Yeah, I get a lot of emails about events going on, and there's definitely a lot more movement in terms of people writing, creating stuff. I don't know if they're doing it in Nepali, but Gangtok has become quite the center of Northeast, the Seven Sisters kind of cultural center because of this bookstore.
Yeah. I just heard a little bit about Rachna books, but don't have much, the inner, the idea about what actually they are doing. But maybe at times, maybe they must be organizing a small get-together or some kind of conference and presentation. But as far as Roque or the a meeting is concerned, I don't have much information about that.
Thank you. I'm as a Tibetan language teacher. I'm interested in to know that you mentioned those like Northern and Emerald. They did some kind of reform the Sikkimese language.
Yes.
Especially they did some kind of simplified classical Tibetan into the Sikkimese. So can you give me some like kind of the examples? Especially this is on like to change some grammatic rules.
Yeah. He has gone through it, and I think the major work out there done by I think Pema Rinzing, which I will send you a copy of the Roque to English dictionary, and some things like that. Especially I think in the Chala, they have tried to make it simplified into writing into a more easy Sikkimese way. Previously they were using the grammars in the based on Tibetan Sutta, but he simplified that, and he put more emphasis on how to bring the other local dialect. Like in Sikkimese you have, like for example, Jachak. There is a word known as Jachak, and things like Dhum and all. These you cannot write in from a Tibetan perspective. So these things, like certain things, he changed it. I think that was a major contribution. Things like that. And I would like to send you a copy of.
Oh, thank you.
In grammar.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, my name is Sasha Schwarzman from Washington, D.C. I went to Sikkim in 2008 with Wonchuk, and I really enjoy your comprehensive and very nuanced analysis of the problems with the Sikkimese language. And as I was listening to you, it occurred to me that Sikkimese is not the only endangered language. And I was curious if you have any examples, if we can think of any examples of a successful revival of other languages that were in a similar situation.
As far as New Zealand, there's a language
Maori.
called Maori.
Yeah.
It's in the similar situation. So yeah, examples you can get from places like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean the analysis of the problem is very important.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, what are the possible solutions? What are the possible ways out of the situation? What can be done positively to solve the problem and encourage? And if there are any examples of a similar situation, they might be useful.
Yeah, so yeah, as for right now, I'm actually trying to see more of this kind of problems, but only so far I have seen like something like the Maoris in New Zealand. Yeah, that's a very interesting and important question in itself, but I think efforts has to come from a bigger group, you know. So yeah, until then that I still have to like think about it. Yeah.
Okay, Kelson, I mean, also people don't seem to realize is like we talked about the monastery, we talked about the lamas and all of this. All the young Sikkimese, they don't understand anything that's happening. You know, like people are just praying. Like I went this time and I told people, why are we sitting here praying? For what? Do you even understand anything they're praying? No. They don't understand what the rituals stand for. They don't know what the traditions are. And you made a great point. You said once you start losing the language, then you might say, oh, now I don't even understand the tradition. So you start losing the tradition. Yeah. You start forgetting how you wear the clothes, how you robe yourself, how you know what you do. So that's a very important thing, because now in future I'm going to start telling people, hey, today fine, you don't know your language, but tomorrow you might not even know how to eat. You know, you don't know how to eat this, you wouldn't know how to cook this, you wouldn't know how to, you know, you would, and that's very interesting. It's important. It's important, but also it's a thing that's been culturally over the years, like you pointed out, stressed it many times. Our parents, for years I've blamed my parents. Every time I talk to my parents, I'm like, no, speak with me in Sikkimese. Why didn't you teach me Sikkimese? But over the years, I'm like, I've stopped the blaming, and I'm like, you know what? It didn't happen, but it's okay. You know, just because it didn't happen then doesn't mean that I will be the same sort of parent, or I'm going to be the same, you know. Yeah. But at the same time, I do need some kind of a resource. Like I need to have books. I want to give another example of a thing that I do. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to just tell stories, but it is important in a way, you know. Every year for gifts, what I do is I buy the dictionary. Yeah. So I've bought tens of this dictionary. I'm probably the only person who's bought this dictionary. And all my family members get the same, you know, gift. They get dictionaries. And they're like, what am I going to do with this dictionary? So how I sell it to them is like, hey, when you have a kid and you want to find a name for, you know, a kid, the dictionary is a good place to go look. You know, you can find, you know, see what Pema means. Oh, okay, this is what it means. So, you know, so if there's Sikkimese in this room and you're thinking, oh, what can I give for a gift? Buy the dictionary, give it around, and then you can sell it to them and say, hey, you want a name for a child? Get the dictionary.
Where can you buy it?
In Sikkim, you can't buy it. But I'm just trying to give you a small example of things you can do, because it does take small things. You know, people don't realize that. Everyone says the same thing. It's like, oh, no one speaks Sikkimese. You know, it's no use. There's no economic benefits. I agree. There aren't any of that. But if you take pride, and then, you know, it'll all come together. And Tibetan is one of the best examples of what I can see around. You were thinking of the revival, right, Sash? And actually, Sasha and I went there. We went to try to document. We went there to try to document language, to try to document music, to try to see how people were doing things traditionally. And the amount of things we learned insight from the rural areas, and even sometimes in the city, were incredible. There's a wealth of interesting things that we can learn for ourselves and we can pass on to our kids and the next generation, which is so interesting. And I somehow would like to share it, but I don't speak the language well enough. I can't write it. I don't have people who are interested in it. I don't have a forum to share it with. But it can happen, and I feel that it can happen, like starting soon. So it's encouraging.
Yes, I think there should be a. It's actually quite late. It should have happened quite earlier, but still, nothing is lost. If realization takes place, I think, then we can begin. Before everything is like lost, I think there is still a chance to gather the whatever's left, and maybe if we can get together and have some kind of a link. I don't think it should be that much of a, big difficulty. So I think I still think that I think there is a positive development which can take place, depending upon the interest of people. And maybe in the verge of extinction, only it is said that people will realize the importance, the value. Maybe Sikkimese locals must be waiting for such kind of a time where they realize that you should gather before it just goes away. And maybe when the time is right. Let's hope for that situation. Yeah.
Can I add one more thing, sorry, about the monasteries?
Yeah.
Last year there was a question about how you can sustain it in the monasteries. I did go to a ton of monasteries in 2008. Most of the and I understand how it's the Nyingmapas and you know how the different sects are there. Most of the monasteries have Tibetan monks now. Very happy for them, very glad. The monasteries with Sikkimese monks, almost none. Very few, I know, because my family, we have a small Gompa, the one which I took you to. There's one Sikkimese monk, so there's very few. So again, don't be under this illusion, especially since we're here and we're trying to have a discussion. Don't be under this illusion that, oh, the monasteries are also the bastions of this place where culture, Sikkimese language is being saved, because it's not true. It's not true. I saw, there are places, there are a few, there might be like 4, 5, 6, 7, there's a few, there is good. But the majority of the monks now are all speaking Tibetan, they are Tibetans, very happy for them, they're bringing in, but where you're thinking that maybe this is where it could happen also, it's almost non-existent. Most of them are Tibetans. All the monks are Tibetans, and I'm generalizing. I don't mean all Tibetan, but I'm just saying when we're talking about Sikkimese in particular, it's not there.
In Sikkimese case, there are monks actually in the monastery, but the Sikkimese situation is a bit different because mostly they are in the tradition of Ngakpa, and they are there in the monastery. The puja is there. They'll get together. They are there. They do the ritual. They do the ceremony, and right after the ceremony is finished, they are back to their respective homes. And that way, sometimes if you're there in the monastery, you might not trace even a single trapper or monk in the monastery. So in that kind of situation, you will find them. But even within that, having said that, even the Hoke is being under diminished situation, because the older ones are good. They practice and they have a perfect Sikkimese or Hoke case perfectly preserved. But with the younger generations, the monks are between somewhere there or here, sort of. They're there. They do their ceremonies, and the problem of switching, the votes. Sometimes you're in the monastery and you can see them talk like in 4 or 5 languages. So when you talk to them, like you get back in reply, they say La, and then La Motian Jangdai Sola. For example, that is like that. Yeah. And then they say Kiburula and all. Like we can't like put things in.
But that's wonderful.
It's
a beautiful mixture.
Yeah.
In
one way, it's interesting. It's some kind of a fusion there taking place, but so that's the situation.
But I know my wife is Sikkimese, and whenever she usually when she calls home, she talks in Nepali with her family. But then she switches to Sikkimese, and I know she's talking about me or complaining something bad about me. Sikkimese, obviously, it's like hard to understand for an Indian. So as a secret code language, they need it.
Switch of code out there.
Sorry to bring such a lively discussion to an end, but that's all we have time for. But I'm sure that Genla would be happy. I invite you all to have some tea and continue discussion outside. And actually, it's a perfect segue to just a reminder about a lecture series event coming up in 2 weeks. It's the final event in the minority language in today's global society's lecture series. And actually the keynote speaker is David Nathan of the Endangered Languages Archive in the SOAS in London, which I believe gives grants to have researchers go out and document endangered languages. So maybe the people in the back would be interested in meeting this person. Also, the whole event is focusing on how information technology and social media is used to support and promote and inspire minority and endangered languages. And the second day in particular focuses on Tibetan IT and social media. So again, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'll just write it down. It's just finished.
So very good. You come to New York. Very good.
Doing well. I did. You said you weren't feeling well though.
Oh, I wish everyone would take.
Oh, thank you.
I wish everyone loved a great discussion.
Yeah,
She told me about the dish that she had.
Yeah.